I'm Susie, a travel-loving money nerd, mom of two, and our family lives between Spain and Colorado. On the Wander World School and Slow Family Travel podcast, we discuss the stories, logistics, and finances of traveling families and the many ways to learn along the way. Today, we get to know Courtney Orgis. Courtney shares her family's 3-year full-time travel journey with 2 young children, starting with a soft landing in Mexico and detailing how they sustain their adventures through remote work. The challenges of full-time travel include the emotional difficulty of being far from family, but the wins involve their children's remarkable adaptability and bilingual language development. Don't miss their 2026 summer family retreat. Welcome to the show, Courtney.
Hey, Susie. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Courtney Orgis, and I have been living abroad and traveling all over the world with my husband and our 2 kids, who are now 3 and 6, but were once, when we first packed up and left, 2.5 and not quite 3 months. So ever since my daughter was 10 weeks old, we've been gallivanting between Spain, Morocco, Brazil, where we are today, Mexico, Colombia, you name it, building community and collecting memories as we go.
So you've been through the thick of it with babies and toddlers on the road. So I can't wait to hear more about what that experience is. And I know you'll share an offering that you all have next summer. But before we get into that, some traveling families, they develop a love for travel when they're young or as adults. What was your travel story like growing up?
I grew up in Florida, and like so many Florida kids, I did Disney World a lot, Busch Gardens a lot, and then we cruised a lot. So that was always sort of there, but I didn't really start traveling, I think, until I got into college. I did a study abroad in Copenhagen in Denmark. And so I got to Europe for my first time, all independent and see some things and get on the train. And I think that's really where it picked up for me. But I do appreciate the domestic travel we did a lot. When I was a kid, just getting to see different parts of the country. I think that for people that travel internationally, domestic travel is kind of like slept on and overlooked for sure. And then being able to go all throughout the Caribbean, of course, is so much fun, especially when you're a kid on a cruise ship.
Florida has proximity to some really great parts of the world. And you're right, the U.S. has a lot of opportunities. There's a family from Germany that's RVing around the U.S. right now, and so I'm following them. There are some amazing parts of the U.S. We have the same wanderlust to get out of the U.S. as well. And where did you meet your husband along the way?
So Justin and I actually went to the same high school. We were absolutely not high school sweethearts. I was way too cool for him, and I still am. I like to remind him all the time. We grew up in the same area. He's originally from Toronto in Canada, and he moved to the Atlanta area, I think around like 8th grade, and I moved to the Atlanta area when I was younger in elementary school, and we just wound up in the same hallways. And we reconnected a couple years after graduation through some friends, and we were very much besties for a little while, and then one thing led to another, and now we're in Rio with our kids.
What a fun adventure. But you have so much history and friendship together, which is very important when you're traveling, to have that strong relationship with your partner. So let's talk about some of those family travels. You've been traveling full-time for going on 3 years then now. Where did you first go when you left the U.S.?
Yeah, we first went to Mexico. 1, because we'd been there before and we loved it. 2, I speak Spanish and Justin was committed to learning. So we were like, soft landing. And then, of course, close proximity to the U.S. with a newborn, right? In case I need my mom. She's like a 2-hour flight away. But we stopped in Playa del Carmen and we got some beach, and I wrote out the rest of my maternity leave, and we decompressed and said, oh my gosh, we really did it. We just sold everything and dipped out. And we screamed into the void for a couple weeks. And then we went to Guadalajara, Mexico, and we sat down there for, I want to say something like 9 months. So as we've traveled, we've alternated slow travel, so having longer, 1, 3, 6, 9 month stints places. And then we've also had periods of time where we're moving pretty quickly between cities, 6 to 8 week, spurts sort of here and there as we crisscross places. But yeah, we started out in Mexico, and it's a great soft landing. The visa situation is very easy to navigate. The culture obviously is very different, but being Americans. And in the South, there's that familiarity there. So it's just a nice sort of transition, right? Away from everything you've ever known your whole life.
Very true. Mexico offers a lot of ease into the travel lifestyle. And like you said, the proximity is great because if you do need to get home, there's many direct flights to the US. You realize actually, like some parts of Mexico, I'm closer to in Colorado than like even New York City by flight. So it's just a matter of perspective. So you're in Brazil now and planning to stay there for a while, from my understanding. What does that look like with landing on Brazil?
So we're in Brazil, we're in Rio de Janeiro, and this is my favorite place in the world. And there was about a year between the first time we were here and this time. And I say this and I'm being dramatic, but also I'm not being dramatic, but also like I just am dramatic. So I'm going to say it. I woke up angry every single day that I was not in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Like I've never missed somewhere so badly upon leaving. We came here for the first time in 2023. This is actually where Whitley, my daughter, took her first steps. We were here right before her first birthday, and I don't know, we just fell in love. There's something about Cariocas, the people from Rio, and the beach and the mountains and the food and everything and the culture that's just really amazing. We were here for a few months. We lived here a few months, and then we went back to the States and then Colombia, and I think over to Europe, and we were in Portugal, and we did the whole thing. And the whole time I was just, wow, I really wish we were in Rio. So earlier this year, when we were leaving Italy and trying to decide what's 2025 going to look like for us, I looked at Justin, Justin looked at me, I looked at Justin, Justin looked at me, and I'm like, let's go back to Brazil. And he was like, all right, let's do it. Yeah, we're here now. I think we're trying to determine what all next year will look like, but definitely through the end of this year. And then we'll definitely be somewhere in Brazil at some point next year, but I can't commit to, being in Rio the whole year. My feet get itchy.
Exactly. And we actually have a Brazilian exchange student living with us this fall. So we have dived a little bit into culture from Brazil. She's shared some of the dishes that they make growing up, and I have a hard time pronouncing them all, but they've been very delicious. And then also we've gotten some books from Brazil. We've talked about the language, and I just see so much cultural and, community pride in her when she talks about Brazil. And, she's young and her family's there. Of course, that's a big part of her life. But I've really appreciated hearing about the many different parts of Brazil. And you look on a map and it's huge. There is so much to see. You could be there forever and not really experience all the variety, the Amazon, the ocean. So it does offer a lot. And Rio is, of course, a beautiful place from everything I've seen. Is it really family friendly, would you say? With the younger kids, is that easy to get around and experience things in Rio?
Absolutely. I know that when a lot of people hear Brazil or Rio specifically, red alerts and danger, danger and favelas, there's a lot that kind of goes off in the mind. So the first thing I'll say is just like anywhere else, different parts of the city are going to have different vibes and levels of accessibility and safety and this, that, and the third. The most popular tourist areas in Rio de Janeiro, that's Zona Sul. So that's Leblon, Ipanema, Botafogo, Flamengo. There are a few neighborhoods. I will say it's all very walkable. There is a train that is air conditioned. The sidewalks are fantastic. There are lots of parks. There are lots of play spaces. And, something else that I notice living in different places, I'm sure you experience this, but it's people just genuinely really like kids. They just like kids. They just look out for kids. They're always trying to give them something or pat them on the shoulder. You see it at the beach when a kid's walking towards the water, eyes on that child for safety, this sort of thing. And there's always something to do. As Brazilians love to celebrate, there's always a festival, a party, someone's, braiding hair and painting faces. And, there's a lot. You'll never get bored. So, and as I'm gushing, I'm well, of course, I sound biased. I just said that Rio was my favorite place. But the short answer to that question is yes.
That's great. Your daughter, this is pretty much all she's known, is traveling and being with her family and on the go. And your son, too, for a big part of his 6 years, right? I'm just curious kind of what they've expressed about traveling, especially when it's full-time lifestyle.
It's funny because now that Xavier, my oldest, he just turned 6 in August. So he's finally sort of at a place where he can really express, what he thinks and how he feels. And he has enough memories to build on now to say that. The other day, I had to get up in the middle of the night to go get Whitley. I think she was having a bad dream and Zay was sleeping next to me. We bed share. It's a whole thing. I'm very tired. But I accidentally woke him up. And he's like, are we going to the airport? He like shoots up groggy. He's like, we're going to the airport. And I'm like, no, baby, like it's fine, go back to bed. But I was thinking about it. And like you said, they're really so primed to travel. Like they're ready to go. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. But for the most part, they really like it. I think sometimes when we make friends places, or when there's like a particular park that Xavier really likes, and he's like, wow, I can't go to this park anymore. Like, I'm not going to see these people anymore. Like, he has a moment, like of reproach of like, time out, because that's my favorite park in the world. And I'm like, you've said that about the last 3 parks, my love. But I think that's the thing that's hard. And then also just not being able to have like a whole like lot of stuff or like a dedicated space. I think sometimes Justin and I think more about that than the kids do. Like Whitley doesn't know what it's like to have a room like painted in a color that like she chose. But sometimes I'm like, I wonder if they'd miss that if they did experience it. But overall, I think they really like seeing new things. They like getting out and exploring and like walking around and asking questions. And one thing that I noticed about them and just their behavior now that we've done this quite a few times is that when we touch down in a new place, like they're so excited for the mundane. And they're like, I want to see what kind of snacks they have here at the grocery store. And let's go like discover the parks in the neighborhood. And I wonder if there's any kids that live in this building. And they have a lot of, I would say, like positive anticipation when it comes to traveling and moving and discovering new places. And I always love that because they're just so adaptable and so cool. And getting to experience places that are new for myself and also through their eyes is probably one of my favorite parts of this whole thing.
Absolutely. Having traveled younger and then doing it with kids, it just really opens your eyes up to how exciting travel can be. And my youngest turned 6 in September, so very similar age to your oldest.
Yeah.
And so I can relate because when we are in our home base here in Colorado, the kids have a room, but yeah, they don't sleep in it. They're always they're always with us. So to maybe ease some of your thoughts there, I mean, when we're here, they have some toys. There's some Hot Wheels and there's some things they play with and they'll play with it, but it's not like they're attached to it. They have just 1 or 2 things, like 1 or 2 stuffies that do matter to them. But I find that the stuff component is really not as essential as maybe we think it might be for kids. That really active play and playing with toys and things can happen in so many different ways that it doesn't always require the stuff part of it. I find that when we're in Spain, we have fewer toys and things as well. It's not suddenly they're more creative here in Colorado when we have more toys, right? It really comes down to just our time with them. And I love that you're traveling when they are so young because all they really want to do is spend time with you and their parents and each other. But it does shift at some point, right? But you're in that sweet spot, I think, of ages where they're interested in just the basics of life. And that's why slow travel can be so great because they don't really need to see all the top sites in every country, right? Thank you for sharing all that. And I know that your kids are a little on the younger end. So I know maybe schooling isn't part of your plan yet, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on the education piece.
So I've always felt, regardless of schools or institutions, like my kids' education is primarily my responsibility. It's always been on my shoulders. And so ever since Xavier was a baby, I'm trying to speak multiple languages and counting and just talk. If you cannot tell, I am very much a talker. So I'm just yap at them all the time from the second of birth up until now. I have not stopped. They haven't stopped. My husband's very tired. But fortunately, he's a good listener. But, we've done a variety of things. So we've worked with them, primarily Xavier when he was younger and we first moved out of, workbook. So like they both have like a workbook that they do. That's just part of the morning routine with, tracing numbers and shapes and whatever is age appropriate. Right now, they're enrolled in an international school here in Rio de Janeiro that works off of a Canadian curriculum. Xavier and Whitley both were enrolled in school in Mexico City that was on an international curriculum, and Xavier was enrolled in school in Guadalajara. Whitley was still too little, and then they both did like a world school thing in Italy. We've also had nannies like here and there, and then a conjunction of like nanny schooling, and then we've done everything but virtual at this point, which I'm looking into, even if it's just supplementary for, say, I just kind of want to see, I want to know what all the options are. I want to touch and look at everything. And I'll say it's been really interesting, I think, for the language component and also the integration component for us. Schools have been really great. It's even nice to be able to connect with like other like local parents and practice the language and set up some play dates, and just helps to get really involved in the local community, that way. And also, schools are an investment. They are expensive. It's very expensive. And when the kids were, you said you're like a finance nerd. So like, I feel like this part matters too, right?
Yes.
It's very expensive. And when the kids are younger and you think in your head, like, oh, we'd be paying for daycare anyway, it makes sense. And then they hit that 5, 6, 7, and you're thinking like, this money could be going towards tuition, and you start to do that sort of math. So we've sort of explored a myriad of options. I will be sort of looking into virtual. The most important thing for Justin and I is always like what's best for the kids. So as their personalities develop and as, everything kind of unfolds around us and we see what they prefer, it's our responsibility to lean in the direction of where they're really going to thrive and what's going to work best for them. And we're starting to take notes and think about these things.
Especially when kids are younger, getting integrated in a school, a preschool, can offer that language support as well as that community integration. We found that we met a lot of families in Spain through the school, and it's really just helped to build up a social life for us as well as the kids. Speaking of the language piece, what languages have been important in your journey? Do you have goals on certain languages that you would like your children to speak? You mentioned some Spanish from the get-go, and then obviously Portuguese now. What does that language part look like?
I need to attain fluency in Spanish. Because I'm at that point where, like, if you don't speak Spanish, you think I'm fluent, but I'm very aware that I'm not fluent. And I would never tell a native Spanish speaker that I am fluent, right? I'm at that little bubble. The kids understand Spanish. Zay doesn't like to speak Spanish. I think he has an affinity for French. We're currently in Brazil. I don't know what's going on. I would like for us all to have at least 3 languages at the end of the day. And I joke all the time that like we have to, pick separate languages so that we can all kind of translate for each other when we need to. But I think English, obviously, that's our native language. I think Spanish is essential. And after that, looking at Portuguese and or French. So we've been practicing our Portuguese while we're here. The kids actually have a nanny. So she's been working with them with Portuguese too and talking to them about, how do you ask the kids to play at the park and that sort of thing, right? And then from there, whatever they have an interest in, whatever they have an affinity for, I want to support them in that. I really do think Zay would take well to French, because I remember the first time we went to France, like even he was little, but he was just so excited. He'd be like, croissant, croissant. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so native. Like, how are you doing that? Which is partially me just being like a silly, like first time mom. But also even now, like he hears French words and he does up the accent, so we'll see where it goes. But I think 3 languages for each of us is kind of the goal.
What a great priority. And you did share a little bit about, though, the costs of schooling and just life on the road in general. How are you funding your travels? And you mentioned some remote work in there, I believe, as well. Tell me a little more about how you can financially sustain the long-term travels.
The first thing that helps is when we left the U.S., we just sold everything. We just boop, house gone, car's gone, all the things gone. And, with that, you also have a nice little fund that allows you to say, okay, worst case scenario, all else fails, there's a parachute over there. And then the other thing is we took our jobs with us. We took the 9 to 5, right? And figured out how to make that work. It's always going to be, I think, more expensive than you think it's going to be on the front end until you figure it out. I think depending on where you are in the world too, one thing we've noticed is that certain things are going to be exorbitantly more expensive than you would think, while other things are cheaper. And, you can do a lot of research, but you just have to have that cushion. So we've always operated in a way of like, this is here in case we need it, tucked away, we know that. And also let's keep working just to make sure that we're building up and we have other goals and we can really live comfortably and how we want to abroad, while making sure that we keep an eye on how much things cost. Because when you travel, when things are in international currencies and when you're using a card, it can get away from you very quickly. If you're not doing the conversion math, it's one thing, or going from like, USD to euros or Canadian dollars or something, but you wind up in Colombia where it's like, $2,005 times, 1.63 divided by 8, but is that even the conversion today? Things, they can snowball. They can snowball very fast.
Exactly. So having a cushion is helpful, gives you peace of mind. And then working along the way helps. What are some of those, like a 1 month spending snapshot, whether that's Brazil or a different country that you've been to? What have you found to be a range that you've spent for travels?
One of the places that we have been the longest, and therefore we just have like the steadiest range of that, is in Mexico City. Mexico City, we lived in a neighborhood called Del Valle, which is important because the neighborhood is so important, right? Because that funnels into like the rent, the groceries, and everything else, which is very local, but it's close to sort of like Condesa and like the other like more popular neighborhoods. We had a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, furnished fully. That included like dishes and everything. No dishwasher, but a very cute building, nice and large. There was a little like bonus room, very comfortable. And our rent fluctuated from $1,700 to about $1,500 a month with the conversion. Honestly, groceries are like the most embarrassing part of it. And it's only because we like big box stores. So if you're shopping like at markets and like little local places, your grocery bill is going to look a whole lot different than if you're at like Chedraui and the Kroger's and the Publix's, right, of whatever country you're in. But even with that, honestly, I would say groceries are coming out to $800 a month. That's mostly cooking at home, but occasionally you have to buy goldfish, which unfortunately is going to be $15 for the best. Not
Of
15.
course.
And then the international school, they were on the full day there, walking distance to the house. Very nice curriculum, bilingual. That was for both kids around $1,500 a month. So those are like the biggest expenses, right? And then you have the other things in flux. So especially when we're in Mexico, we would build travel into the budget, right? So if we wanted to go to Puerto Vallarta, El Taco, right, or we wanted to get down to Oaxaca or something like that, we're setting aside, a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there, just so that that's not, one big impact. We try to make sure that we're staying under $5,000 to $5,500, give or take, for the currency conversion in any given month where we are. So that's why sometimes too, if we get it in our heads that we want to go somewhere more expensive, like if we want to bop around Europe, we're staying in places for like those shorter stints just to make it make more sense like monetarily. Whereas somewhere like Mexico or when we were in Guatemala or Colombia where it's a little less expensive, we're staying places for a longer period of time.
And then a lot of those expenses are things you're going to spend no matter what, wherever you are. Once you get some of those big pieces down, it's just a matter of, like you said, saving for some of those travels that you want to take in between some of that. Speaking of travel, on your blog in 2021, I was looking through some past articles, and you shared a post that was titled Travel Inspiration for Families, Our Ever-Growing Bucket List. So I thought it would be really fun to go through that list since it's been about 4 years since you put that together. And I know sometimes family priorities change, but I was curious if you've been to some of these locations, what your thoughts are about them, and if you haven't been yet, if it's still on your bucket list. So the first one was the Aurora Borealis.
Oh, the Aurora Borealis is my number one. I have not gone yet, but it's strongest between October and April. And my birthday, my husband's birthday, and our wedding anniversary is in October. So I'm hoping that next year is the year we'll be like, get away without the kids and we can like do the whole, Northern Lights thing.
True. Save some of those big trips for the ones that matter to you and your husband for when you can do it on your own, which is important too. Apple picking in New England.
No, but I want to go. Well, actually, you know what? We just went apple picking in Toronto. We've done apples and strawberries in Toronto. So I'm going to say that halfway count.
I think
but
that
I want to
counts.
get the full New England experience one day.
And that has to be in the fall too. So put that with Aurora Borealis somehow. Hot air balloon in Turkey.
Ooh, we did hot air balloon in Marrakesh. So that's another half credit. Yes. I'll say.
I think that counts. Pyramids of Giza.
No, not yet. Gotta go there.
Still on the list. Safari hot air balloon ride.
No, gotta do that. I think there's a wildebeest migration around Xavier's birthday in Kenya. So I kind of want to make that like about him, like a him trip. I'll see if he even actually cares to like want to see it, but I have like a plan for that one.
You're right. As the kids get older and have more thoughts on where they want to be for certain things, some of these like big ticket items are a little easier to plan for than when they're younger. And you're like, are they even going to realize how awesome this is? So it's a trade-off. Canal tour of Venice.
Yes, we actually ticked that off earlier this year. Venice was amazing. It exceeded my expectations.
What time of year were you there?
We were there in February? No, maybe March, like early March.
It feels like
It was still chilly.
Might be right before some of the summer tourist crush. Do you feel like that was actually a good time to avoid some of the crowds?
I think it was a great time because it wasn't crowded at all. And I'd actually heard that like during the hotter months, just because of all the water, there can be like a bit of a smell. And so we didn't have any smell. There were not a lot of crowds. And nowhere was booked up. We didn't have an issue finding like a table, going out to eat. So I think March was really nice. And it was sunny, clear skies. It was a little chilly, but again, I'm from Florida, so I'm kind of dramatic with that stuff anyway.
But that's a win for traveling a little bit in the off season. What about Eiffel Tower?
Yes, we did. Xavier slept through it though. I have a picture of him just like conked out in his stroller. But Justin and I got some cute pictures. So a win is a win.
That's great. Tour the coast of West Africa.
Oh, we haven't done that one yet. That one's coming up though. I think I've finally gotten like my mom and my sister and my dad and like our family like on board to do like a big like West Africa trip, specifically even going to Benin. Again, my wheels are turning on that one. The pieces are coming together.
Especially if you want to include other family members. That can take a while to plan and coordinate. Swimming in the Dead Sea.
No, not yet. I'll have to lump that one in with the pyramids of Giza.
Makes sense. And Marrakesh markets.
Yes, we've done the Medina in Marrakesh. Marrakesh was amazing. Another place where I'm like, I have to get back to there.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's your ever-growing bucket list. So you have things on it you still want to get to, and I'm sure there's been things that you want to add to it as well. I love to hear about where people's minds were a couple of years ago, like when they're starting out with travel. And then sometimes we think we can fit more in than we really do, but it just gives us more to aim for in the future. You highlighted it on your blog that your family's been featured on CNN and USA Today to represent the possibilities for Black families who want to adopt the digital nomad lifestyle. Can you tell me more about that journey to advocate for Black family travel and how this has influenced your travels?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the biggest things is, particularly with anyone who wants to live an international lifestyle or be a global citizen or bicontinental, it's more of a possibility now than it's ever been, right? And for so many people, they look at, the young 20-somethings backpacking through Europe, and there's like that sense of FOMO or, you have people that, don't have a remote job or they have a good reason not to be able to leave where they are and they're looking at people who've moved abroad. All I want to do is to be able to stand up and say like, hey, like I am now a 30-something. Ooh, life comes at you fast. I've got kids, I'm married. I'm a 9-to-5 employee. Still found a way to make this work. You can too. I also think it's really important for groups that have been historically underrepresented in travel and in having the opportunity to choose immigration, right? As opposed to being, forced to a fro. To be able to sort of like take that back and to give the gifts of that to their children. There's so much in the world that, Black kids or queer kids or immigrant kids, whatever marginalized group you want to put on it, they just don't think certain things are for them. They don't see people doing it. They don't think it's an option. And, unfortunately, sometimes the call even comes from inside the house and we have people that look like us telling us that that's not for us. So my goal, and to bring it, a little bit back more interpersonally, when I look at my kids, is for them to know that there's nowhere that they just can't go. There's nothing they can't do. There's nowhere that they just don't belong, right? And I want to give them that wanderlust and that ability to be able to, feel comfortable in different situations and to be able to come into someone's culture and respect it and adapt to it. And, to be able to pick up all of the good, beautiful pieces of things that we've experienced between Portugal and Guatemala and the US and Marrakesh and Rio, and to be able to integrate that into who they are so that they can be their most elevated and aligned and best selves.
Oh, that's really well put. Thank you for sharing. I think that's so important to have that representation and to know that it's possible and to advocate for other families that might not know if this is something that they can do. And to be a voice for that is so important. We also like to talk about the wins of long-term family travel and sometimes the challenges that come with it, especially when it's full-time. What are some struggles or challenges that your family is experiencing now or has experienced on your travels?
I think this past year, I think for the first time, we've really felt the weight of being far away from family. Last year in November, my grandmother died. And it was a situation where it all escalated really quickly. Like she was fine and then she wasn't, and then we didn't know, and then she was gone. There's a special kind of panic that comes with having to be on Google flights, fighting through tears, trying to figure out, can I make it today? Can I make it tomorrow? And then again, the financial component, it's 8 times more expensive if I'm trying to make it today versus tomorrow and weighing the cost of that. Whereas, if we were still in Atlanta, Jacksonville, that's a 5-hour drive if you speed. You can leave immediately. It's a 5-hour drive. All you have to do is stop for gas and, pray a state trooper doesn't stop you. And then similarly, my husband's father passed away in August. And it's a similar thing where it's like, well, the doctors are saying, but when and that it's a long flight between Rio and Toronto. That's an even longer flight. So I think the biggest hardship that's come along with that, and again, with these 2 examples, particularly within the past year, is just like, wow, how far away is too far away to be for an extended period of time? So I think that's the biggest one. And aside from that, I think it's things that people can guess. Like I said earlier, like things can get really expensive really quickly. Our first few months, I swear we just lit cash on fire before we got a handle of what was going on. And then there are other smaller things like, figuring out how to pack and, what you do and don't need. And like you said, the kids have a few good stuffies now, but before we were trying to lug around, this huge thing of Magna tiles, 125 pieces of Magna tiles, TSA looking at us like we are just absolutely bonkers for trying to do that.
There's a lot of things to consider. But let's also talk about the wins because you've been at this for a couple of years. What are some of the positive parts?
One of the largest positives is that when you change where you are and how you live and what you encounter day to day, like you change your whole perspective on life. And you start to want different things and appreciate different things. And when you're thrust into new cultures with new languages and new surroundings, that neuroplasticity in your brain just like rewires, right? You become a different person. You really, really do. I was talking to Justin about this the other day, but it's interesting because the person that I have become since traveling is so wildly different than the person I was before. And like maybe the kids have something to do with that, right? Just rewiring my brain every day in their own special way. But I think that's really amazing because now I'm at a point where like I see visions for the future that I hadn't seen before, right? I have desires. I want things. I want to create and build things that I didn't even know there was a need or desire for some months ago. And then again, watching my kids really adapt and pick things up and seeing the gifts of travel reflected into them. I was talking to Xavier in Spanish in the kitchen earlier, and he can understand me. And then his nanny turns around and says something to her in Portuguese. And he looks at her and kind of squints for a second. And then I see him respond in English, and then she responds in Portuguese. I was like, oh my God.
Those are magical moments. Absolutely.
I was like, that's 3 languages in 10 minutes. Like, it's magic. You know what I mean? I got so excited. And then he told me too that Whitley was like starting to like say things like in Portuguese, like to other kids at the park, and also seeing the clear and tangible benefits for my children, right? Like even if it's just a little bit of foundation in a couple different languages, that's putting them ahead. Being able to navigate, different cultures and different languages, even if it's just different parks, like that's putting them ahead. I'm giving them advantages that I wouldn't have been able to give them, had we just been sat in one place and not sort of like taken to globetrot.
I agree. It's such a gift we can give our children. I'd like to jump into a lightning round. One item that you cannot travel without.
Ooh, toothbrushes. New toothbrushes, hard bristle toothbrushes. They have to be hard bristle toothbrushes.
First thing you do when you arrive in a new country.
Find the parks and grocery stores.
Gotta know where the food is, right? What is the most delicious food that you've ever tried on your travels?
Ooh, they're like palitos. I don't remember what they're called, but they're little like baked like cheese-filled like cheese bread in Colombia.
That sounds delicious. What is one piece of advice you have for a family that's just starting out?
Don't feel rushed to go everywhere you see on Instagram, hit all the landmarks, or keep up with whoever the Joneses of family travel are. Just do your thing and settle into your rhythm.
That's so, so true. If you could teleport to one place right now, where would it be?
Ooh, you know what? Honestly, I've been itching to get back to Madrid. I miss Madrid. I had amazing Senegalese food, and I've been thinking about Madrid lately. So as long as I could like pop over for lunch or a little aperitivo maybe and like pop back, I would choose
Yes.
Madrid.
Oh, I so wish we could actually have that ability to like teleport around the world for lunch. That sounds lovely. Yeah, if you ever end up back in Madrid when we're in Sevilla, just let me know. We could always somehow meet up in Madrid or something. That would be great. You also have an opportunity coming up next summer. Would you like to share a little more about your travel opportunity for families?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, we are hosting the Village Abroad, which is a retreat. There's an option to either just stay for 1 week or stay for the full 2 weeks in St. George's, Grenada, June of 2026. And we're making this an all-inclusive thing. So, we're going to have the accommodation. We have cottages and villas with 2-bedroom options available. Monday to Friday childcare for both older children to do like an active camp, and for younger children to get to do some like crafting, creative hands-on activities. In Spice Island, we're going to build in some excursions and also just give families who travel, who live abroad, who are, try, quadruple continental, what have you, an opportunity to come together, because sometimes that's hard too, right? Especially through the screen. We meet people on social media and we don't get to connect with them all the time in real life. So we're putting this together, just a retreat to, share resources, build community, have some fun, do some great things for the kids so that they can make some other third culture kid friends, and also make sure that we set aside time for parents to connect and relax and, network and enjoy everything that the beautiful island of Grenada, which is actually where Justin's family is from.
So that's how you picked the location. This is where his family is from?
Yeah, it is.
So
And
great.
actually, the kids and I, our first time going will be in February to put things together for this and to, hug the necks of some cousins that we've only gotten to see on the screen and stuff like that. So it's really exciting. But yeah, all of his grandparents are from Grenada and then they moved up to Toronto. So it's also nice to just be coming back, to the island and being able to celebrate it this way.
That's so special. And I do agree that for families to be able to travel, incorporate a little childcare so they can get some rest and relaxation, it's like the perfect combination of plenty of family time. But there's also time to socialize and be with community and get a little bit of a break for the parents. So I'm like wondering, why did I ever plan a trip that did not involve some type of community and childcare or learning opportunity? When you're doing everything just in a new location, it's actually not as relaxing as when you get to partake in an opportunity like this. So I will share that in the show notes. And where can people connect with you?
So they can find us across social media. We are on Instagram primarily. We're on YouTube a lot, dropping some Rio de Janeiro content at O.Family.Adventures.
That's great. I've been appreciating your YouTube channel because it offers that visualization of where you're at and the travels you've been on. I've really enjoyed hearing more about you and your family.
Yes, thank you for having me. You will be the first call I make when I wind up back in Spain, because it'll be soon.
Let us know. Thank you. That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please do me a huge favor and tell a friend or traveling family about the show. And hey, don't miss out on bonus content, behind the scenes, and more on Instagram, Facebook, or Substack. Thanks for tuning in. Go send this episode to a friend. See you next time.